Hello, my name is Jessica Crunkleton. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, licensed mental health counselor, certified alcohol and drug abuse counselor, sand tray therapist, certified EMDR therapist, EMDR coach, and EMDR trainer in training. In addition, I am an EMDR client. I recently decided to make this series entitled EMDR 101. And the reason that I decided to make this series is that there just seems to be a lot of misconceptions about EMDR from the general public, but also from individuals who are going through EMDR training, or even some that may have been trained in the past in different types of EMDR. So I decided to make this video series because I thought it'd be a neat idea just to try to put out some positive information, some clear information about EMDR, what it is, and that sort of thing. One of the big issues about EMDR that clinicians that I've seen, and this again is for me as a EMDR trainer in training, EMDR coach who has participated with over 30 EMDR basic trainings. I've worked with 8 basic EMDR trainers. I do consultation calls 6 days a week, several hours a day for basic training and also for certification. So that's a lot of consultation calls. A lot of people have come in contact with probably over 800 clinicians, including psychologists, psychiatrists, nurses, people who are independently licensed, marriage and family therapists, mental health counselors, social workers, individuals who are associate level therapists, and also individuals who are in grad school but are able to do the practicum part of the grad school where they can see clients. So one of the big issues that I often see is clinicians feeling like EMDR, it's not working. Okay, so I'm doing this training, I'm trying to use this with my clients, and it's not working, right? And so there's a number of things that we can kind of look at to determine why the EMDR therapy is not working with the client. But one of the big things that stands out for me that I often will see is it often resides, and this is not a judgment on anyone, the clinician's perception of EMDR, right? So there can be issues mechanically about EMDR that we need to address. Like, for instance, the target incident may be too big or too vague. The negative positive belief may not match. The clinician may be going too fast. And we'll talk about more of those in the future. But the number one thing that I have seen over and over and over as a reason why EMDR is not working is that the clinician themselves who is going through the training, they don't believe it. You know, one of the things we often say with EMDR is trust the process. Go with that. Like, we literally say go with that as we're doing EMDR. And I think that's a part of how it kind of flows. But I think these things are really true. If you're going to do EMDR therapy, you really have to be able to trust this process, which is really hard to do because you're coming in. And I know, for instance, for me, I was trained as a talk therapist in grad school. They told us, when you talk to somebody, they're supposed to feel better, right? So you get out there in the field, they give you all these CBT skills, nothing wrong with CBT, but that's what I had when I went out on these streets and trying to work with clients. And one of the things I noticed right away was, I dealt with a lot of complex trauma clients. And so I'm trying to do these skills with them, teaching them these things, cognitive restructuring, doing all this stuff. And they didn't all get better. In fact, a lot of them didn't get better. They actually got worse. Talking about their trauma, talking about the things that happened to them did not make them feel better. And it didn't make me feel better either, because I'm hearing it, vicarious trauma, those sort of things. So they're not feeling better. I'm not feeling better. And I'm like, okay, where do I go from here? There's got to be something else out there, which is when I happened to find out about EMDR therapy. Again, thought it was kind of weird, but decided to do it. But one of the issues that I had initially was being trained as a talk therapist, going to EMDR training, now sitting there and being told, you don't have to do all that. You don't have to know the client's whole story. Again, as a marriage and family therapist, we are trained to really understand a client's history, go into their background, understand their family systems, map it out, genogram, all this stuff. So it's a lot of history and things like that, because we look at patterns. Now, shifting to an EMDR therapist, it's very different. We're still going to do some of those things, but it doesn't take as nearly quite as long. And that was really a hard shift to make for me. And it's something that I've seen for a lot of clinicians that they struggle with making the shift. Again, when you've been taught to do things a certain way, especially if you've been in the field, a couple of years, 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, you just have a way that you do things. You have a way that you see your clients, you visualize the problems, and you see the way that things can get better for them. So shifting into an EMDR state of mind can be really challenging because we're going from a lot of times talk therapy, right, to the brain, thinking about the brain and letting the brain basically no longer us having the solution and being the one in charge and knowing how to fix the situation. It is the client's brain. We believe AIP, the adaptive information processing network, we believe that that is always present and that the client can get better. And we're just going to help them and let their brain process and work things out. That's very different than how a lot of clinicians are trained. And they struggle with this transition. And so, again, one of the big things I just want to highlight is that if you are going to do EMDR training, this is a big investment. As one of my fellow clinicians would say, it is not a cheap date. It is expensive, over $1,000. For some, I know some organizations charge close to $2,000, right? So if you're going to do this training, if you're going to invest that type of money, the commitment of doing a 2-weekend training or a 5-day training, and then having to do 10 hours of consultation, and then having to do learning management system and go through all this and do all these things, you want to make that investment count. And so the big thing has to be, you have to be willing to open up your mind and consider a new way of doing things. Otherwise, what's the point in going to the training, right? So if you are someone who is really dead set on only doing CBT, hardcore, DBT, or let's say you're trained, there's different protocols for like OCD, and you feel that is the only way to help people, there is no other way to help people, you might struggle in an EMDR training because it may challenge some of the things that you've learned in terms of how to treat individuals. Now, again, I say, take what you like, leave the rest. It could be that you go to the EMDR training, you still utilize the things that you've been using, and you use EMDR, the resourcing part, or there's other parts of it that you decide to use and you just keep the other things that you're doing. That's a possibility. But I do, again, want to just highlight, if you're going to do this, if you're going to really invest the time and energy into it, there has to be an open-mindedness about how you see your client. In addition, if you're one of these individuals who thinks there is no hope, that your clients can't get better. I've seen a lot of people, they seem to be hopeful in the beginning, but they get in the field and they get kind of jaded. And especially sometimes if you work like in criminal justice systems or other certain types of systems where they use labeling, which they use it in different systems, but it's kind of like good guy, bad guy, right? That sort of thing. And so if your mindset is, I don't think this person can get better, I don't think there's any hope for them, they're being resistant, they cannot change, that sort of thing, this may not be the thing for you, because we don't think like that. We believe that there is hope for clients. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to go from having certain mental health conditions that are persistent and then they're not going to have them anymore. That's not what I'm saying. Absolutely not at all. But what I am saying is that there may be hope to help them function in a more adaptive manner within what they can do, right? There's kind of this bandwidth, kind of this way that they can progress, and that might be the best that they can do, but we can help them get there. And so if you're going to do this work, if you're going to invest in the training, one of the big things I would say is to go in with an open mind, okay? I know it sounds weird, it sounds kooky, it's hocus pocus, right? You're gonna wave your fingers, you're gonna do some tapping, I don't know what that means. But if you go in with an open mind, maybe do some of your own research, but really go in and say, you know what, I'm gonna give this a shot. I'm willing to take what I know, kind of set it aside for a second, take this in, what you're telling me, just give it a try. And if you don't like it, don't do it, right? But at least give it a shot, right? So again, that would be my advice for new clinicians trying to break into this EMDR game, jumping into it. That's the big thing. Number one, you're going to have to believe it. Or again, there is no way that you will be able to use this with your clients because you don't buy it. And if you don't believe it, they're not going to believe it. You're not going to be able to sell it to them. You're not going to be able to really get into it, to think that there is hope for them. And again, I think part of our job as therapists is we're selling hope. We're selling that there is a hope for a future that is much brighter than where they are today. And you can't do that if you don't believe that that's even possible. All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.